Go to regular.
Hey, can you hear us now, Jeffrey? I just unmuted us. Maybe that's what it was.
What about now? What about now? What about now?
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. We are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, Alabama coal miners are still on strike. We get an update from Brian Sanson, the UMWA International Secretary-Treasurer. A Republican state representative is explicitly siding with West Rock in the Alabama paper mill lockout, and Democrats are silent. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number, and the line is open. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. Got a text from Athens saying we need to unmute me for the radio. Not sure if we've taken care of that. But if you want to be part of the program today, we've got a phone number, and the line is open. You can call or text 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave a voicemail or send us a text message throughout the week, and we might answer it on the next program. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us anywhere you find anything online. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining member of the program, make a one-time donation, or buy our hat or a Join a Union t-shirt. I found one of our old hat, or one of, not our old hats, but the Good Things Union graph hat. I found one of those, or a couple of those, in my car, hiding under a bunch of old books and stuff. So they are fine and they still look good. So we've got a few more of those left, and we have and I also found in that same bag one more Join a Union tee. It is large and it is red. So send us a message if you want that. First come, first serve. You can donate on our website, tvlr.fm, or tvlr.fm/donate, or tvlr.fm/store. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. If you're a member of a union, then think about getting your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that. So I had a great Christmas. Looking forward to hanging out with some folks tonight for New Year's. We got a message in the chat. Welcome back, folks. How was your break? And yeah, it was good. It was good. I got this really nice jacket actually from David. So that was a really nice thing that he did. And I have been wearing it everywhere. And going to hang out with some folks tonight in Birmingham for New Year's Eve. Going to be a lot of fun. I understand that Adam got his kid a set of drums, which is
a very brave thing to do as a parent.
A very brave thing to do as a parent, definitely. But he said that she's doing good on them, so. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into our first segment. That is going to be Last Week in Southern Labor. We do that segment mostly every week. And in that segment, we tell you what happened in the labor movement in the South. We pull the information from Jonah Furman's newsletter, Who Gets the Bird?, which compiles all this information for the entire United States. So if you want to see what's going on outside of the South, then subscribe to his newsletter. That is whogetsthebird.substack.com. And with that, let's jump into new organizing for the week of December 11th to the 18th. He took a week off after the 18th, and we took the week off of, subsequent to that. So this is about 2 weeks old. But nevertheless, in new organizing, we had 150 workers for industrial contractor Brown and Root out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who were organizing with the United Steelworkers Union. 34 building engineers and maintenance staff at George Washington University in D.C. are unionizing with Operating Engineers Local 99. 25 workers for defense contractor Amentum at the Naval Air Station in New Orleans are joining IUE-CWA. For Jacobin, Cody Melcher wrote about the Unite Here union drive at the New Orleans Loyola University. So definitely check that out. It's also goes into some broader themes about unionism at Catholic institutions more broadly. Elsewhere in the same city, the Independent Lowe's Union in New Orleans withdrew its petition because, get this, they didn't have a name listed on their authorization cards for their independent union, which had not been named at the time they began collecting authorization cards, which the NLRB had previously told them was fine, but they then backtracked after pressure from Lowe's and said that even though they had 45% of the bargaining unit had signed cards, that they're going to have to start the process over again.
That's a bummer.
Yes, just a really, really big bummer. In wins and losses, 12 fire captains at the Oak Ridge National Lab in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, voted 11-1 to join the International Association of Firefighters, Local I-101. 8 workers for Heritage Fire Protection in Ashland, Kentucky, deadlocked 1-1, thus not joining UA Local 669. In strikes and bargaining, around 100 stores participated in Starbucks Workers United's 3-day double-down strike, which is the union's biggest action yet. The teachers union in Escambia County, Florida, has a deal with the district, but some members are not happy with it and are protesting the agreement. Hundreds of United ALPA pilots picketed the company's board meeting in Houston amid their ongoing contract fight. Elsewhere in airline labor, 8,300 customer service workers with the Machinists at Southwest ratified a new deal after having voted down a previous proposal. Railroad workers rallied in about a dozen cities a couple weeks ago, generally bringing attention to the issues workers face across the industry, from, quote, precision scheduled railroading, unquote, to the fight against one-man crews, to also a now well-known lack of sick days. It comes amid a push for executive action on granting rail workers paid sick days. So far, nothing from the White House on that. In politics and legislation, federal workers have been pushing for the reconfirmation of Ernest Dubester to the Federal Labor Relations Authority to preserve the Democratic majority on the Federal Labor Board for many, many months, and for some reason it still hasn't happened. You can add this to the list of pro-labor partisan no-brainers, like funding the NLRB, that for some reason don't seem to be a priority for the Democratic leaders. In internal union politics, Eddie Hall, a working railroad engineer, has won the presidency of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, which is an affiliate of the Teamsters Union, ousting 12-year incumbent Dennis Pierce to lead the second largest freight rail union. On Friday, Dennis Pierce released a statement that an internal board found election violations, that require the vote to be rerun, but also announced that he would not be seeking re-election. So Eddie Hall does win the presidency, but technically only because Dennis Pierce retires.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it's interesting that a outsider won this union election immediately in the aftermath of this major contract battle with the rails. So, who knows what that could lead.
As the UFCW internal fight rams up before their 2023 convention this spring, the International's organizing director, Todd Crosby, resigned in protest and has joined the staff of UFCW Local 3000, which is the most vocal local in calling for change in the union. That's a very big deal as well. So we're going to go ahead and head to our first break. Don't go anywhere, though. We are going to be talking to UMWA International Secretary-Treasurer Brian Sanson about the Warrior Met strike in Alabama. Stay tuned.
Hometown Action is a grassroots organization building a multiracial working class movement for racial, gender, economic, and environmental justice in Alabama's rural communities. We stand in solidarity with Alabama workers and are proud to support the Valley Labor Report's efforts to inform and build the Southern worker movement. Please visit hometownaction.org and follow our social media channels at Hometown Action to learn more about how you too can get involved to make the South a better place for all workers. Solidarity, y'all.
IBW 558 is like a great football team. You've got to have the aptitude, skills, and knowledge to outperform the competition. If you're a non-union electrician, now is the perfect time to get off the sideline and join our team. We have the absolute best wages and benefit package in North Alabama and Southern Tennessee. It's because our team stands together, bargains together, and our families benefit from it. With immediate openings, you have the opportunity to see why the IBW is the right choice.
Energy Alabama is a locally operated and membership-based nonprofit organization focused on advancing Alabama's clean energy future through education and advocacy. Many people in charge of infrastructure and building decisions simply don't know about how viable clean and renewable energy is. To that end, Energy Alabama has provided instruction to more than thousands of adults and tens of thousands of K-12 students across the state. We're working hard to build careers in clean energy and help everyday Alabamians save money on their utility bills. Learn more about our work and how you can join us at energyalabama.org.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program comes from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 136 out of Central Alabama. Learn more at ibew136.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. If you got anything to add, you can give us a call or send us a text. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also join us in our Facebook or YouTube chats online. Our first guest this morning is Brian Sanson. He is the International Secretary-Treasurer of the United Mine Workers of America. Several hundred members of which are still on strike against Warrior Met Coal in Alabama. Brian, thanks for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Thank you all for having me. This is a difficult situation we find ourselves in leading into 2023, but the members in Alabama remain dedicated to the strike and continue to fight every day. So we're hoping 2023 is a little better year than 2022.
Absolutely, and I know that so many folks are behind y'all, as are we, obviously, and we're about 20 months in at this point. And how you mentioned that folks are still dedicated to the strike, still holding strong. How are y'all holding up, the negotiating team and folks like that?
Well, the negotiations have been frustrating since the beginning. When a company puts more money into trying to break a strike than they do the contract that could have been in place, for the next 5 years, it's obviously frustrating. Their proposals haven't really improved since April of 2021. So, this is a long time to be negotiating and really just moving money around from one pot to another pot. It's, they just, even with the record coal prices that the company enjoys, which is the only reason the strike's even lasted this long. Absent these coal prices, this company could have never afforded to mine coal with the workforce they have now, because their costs are much higher without the UMWA workers. So but they don't see that operational pain because coal prices are higher than they've been. I've been in the industry for going on 30 years now, and I've never seen them this high. I don't know that they've ever been this high.
Right.
And that hides a multitude of sins within the company. But our folks in Alabama, they're from all over the United States. They're down there working. They leave their families. This has been a tough couple of years for them, but they believe in the union. They believe in this strike, and they believe in the employees at Warrior Met, and they're in it for the long haul, just like every member of the United Mine Workers is.
And I think that's an important point to underscore, and I don't know if you have any of the actual numbers like off the top of your head, but the company wouldn't be you said it, the company wouldn't be able to do this under normal circumstances. They're not operating at their full capacity. I understand that the union came out with a report showing that they missed out on $1 billion in revenue that they could have had if they had all of your members in there working, all of these experienced miners who some of them that I've spoken to, 10, 20, 30 years in the mines, right? These folks know how to mine coal, and there's a lot of them. And they're not operating at full capacity. The people that they've got in, they don't have the experience. And so, what are some of those numbers on the, how they're operating? Do y'all have a good idea of that?
Well, they lost over $700 million in revenue just in, hold on, little cheat sheet, I think in 21 and 22. And it was 1.2 billion, based upon their historical tonnage versus what they've been mining with these folks. But it's unfortunately, again, the coal pricing has hidden those things, or the investors that are actually losing this money don't view it that way, because they're still seeing dividends and returns on their investment. So it's, unfortunately, I think what you run into with these monster hedge funds is that you've got number crunchers that don't look at the upside. They look at what is actually there, not what could be there, and they haven't really pressed the company to settle this strike.
At one point, it seemed like BlackRock was chastising Warrior Met, but that's been several months ago now, and I haven't heard anything else about that. Why do you think it is that, because it seems to me like if I'm I'm somebody that wants to make as much money as I can, and I hear, I've missed out on $1.2 billion for what? And for what, right? For no reason. That would make me upset. And BlackRock, sent a letter saying, it's in the best interest of the shareholders to settle this strike. And, I haven't heard anything out of them since then.
Yeah, well, hedge funds are in the business of making money, and that's it. And they're not in the business of caring about communities or workers. The union was protesting in front of their buildings in New York and other places, and, they wrote the letter. It's something that I never thought that a hedge fund would do. And, but unfortunately, they're one hedge fund, and there's a lot of them that, make up this company that have not put any pressure in it. The Vanguards, the Fidelities of the world, just all the major normal players in the investment world have just haven't put that same kind of statement out there. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch people make money and you really do nothing to help the workers in Alabama. to sit back and watch people profit, and that it's upsetting. It's upsetting for these families, and the folks at Warrior Met. You talk with them, and you try to explain to them, look what's going on here. This is your backyard. These are your neighbors, and they don't care, and it's a terrible situation. And these folks, they struggle now, and they've been struggling since the strike started.
And can you remind us, because I think that 20 months on, I think that some folks really, or well, probably a lot of folks never understood actually just the kind of things that your members went through at Warrior Med, and the things that they gave up, that they sacrificed for the company in 2015, that they wanted some restoration of, and which was it. It's not like they were asking for more than they made in 2015. So remind folks what the issues were, why your members decided to strike.
That's a good point. So in 15, this same management team that's there now made purchases that were really questionable, and it ended up that those purchases were a big reason the company went into bankruptcy. They filed bankruptcy. They cut off the health care to 2,500 former coal miners at Jim Walter's Resources. They got a court order that allowed them to exit our 1974 pension plan, owing about $1 billion of unpaid withdrawal liability. And then they cut the workers' time off drastically. They eliminated their current health care, their past health care benefit plan, and instituted a very high deductible plan. And they cut their wages by $6 an hour. So in 2015, when the rest of the industry was enjoying a much more lucrative package to work in the mines, these were some of the lowest paid coal miners in the United States. And here we are in 2023 getting ready to start, and their wage package really isn't substantially better at all. And their benefit packages are substandard within the industry. So these folks have given up a lot. The people who made this company and drove all the profits, made the folks that are running this company millions of dollars, and the investors millions of dollars. You had an investor that was Apollo, that basically was one of the lead hedge funds in the bankruptcy. They received all their money back.
Right.
They received huge dividends in 17, 18, and 19. They were gone then. They took their money and left. And then and it's just greed. I mean, it's all it really is, because the company can clearly afford to pay these miners a living wage, and they would prefer to punish them, to leave them out on strike, and go 2 Christmases with families struggling. And
right.
It's a terrible thing to watch. It's terrible to be a part of, but it's worse when you talk to these families and you see what they're going through. It's heartbreaking, and it's hard to believe that. I mean, look, all companies can be difficult. They all put a bottom line over top of people, but Warrior Met seems to be enjoying this. This is a lesson to be learned for workers in Alabama, workers in the South, and they want to punish these workers as much as possible. And quite frankly, that's what's going on over the last 2 years.
And now I want to create a comparison for the audience. You just went through all of these things, how these workers sacrificed because of the management's decisions, right? Y'all didn't, I'm assuming, and correct me, y'all didn't get a vote on these investment decisions that the management team made, right?
That's correct.
So these investment decisions, the management team that is still there, still the same CEO, Walter Scheller, same guy that took the company into bankruptcy, he's still there. Y'all didn't make these investment decisions, but y'all sacrificed. Your members sacrificed. $6 an hour, cuts to their health care, cuts to their retirement, cuts to their time off. All of this, that's a $6 an hour cut alone. That alone is a significant sacrifice to save the company. The company became profitable again, and they're not interested in restoring or even, as I understood it, meeting inflation with their contract offer. What were the sacrifices that management made to bring the company out of bankruptcy? Did they take a pay cut? Did they go down in the mines to help y'all out?
No, it's the exact opposite. While they were in bankruptcy, the executive team received huge bonuses approved by the bankruptcy courts, and they continue to still receive these huge incentive packages. The CEO is one of the higher paid CEOs in the coal industry right now.
It's so gross. And so what about I didn't ask you about this yesterday, and so if you don't feel like talking about this, that's fine, but how are you feeling about the state and the federal response to this strike?
Well, the state response has been one that, it has been completely and totally for the company. The police, harassed the strikers. And when I say the police, this is the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Department, Jefferson County, and the Alabama State Police, by order of the governor, escort the strikers to work. So, at the state level, it's just atrocious what's going on. Anytime that any kind of litigation has occurred or the union has brought any action, even to the Alabama State Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court goes as far as to issue rulings with no commentary at all. So there's nothing to appeal because they just say, "Well, the union's wrong." Period. And it's very frustrating. On the federal level, extremely disappointed in the Mine Safety and Health Administration. The union is the designated miners rep. So we act by definition in the Act, Mine Safety Act. We have a right to inspect those coal mines every single time a federal inspector goes underground. The federal government has acknowledged this, but will not enforce it. They write the most minimal fine possible, and our safety inspectors are not allowed to go underground. They're having accidents. They just had an accident over the holidays. Ice accumulated in the shaft, fell and injured several workers. If the union would have been there inspecting that mine, that would have never happened. But this is a fault of our government, and they're letting these miners in Alabama down.
And not only the safety issues, but there's been some environmental issues as well since the strike began. I have this tweet that I just pulled up from the Black Warrior Riverkeeper with pictures of a nasty wastewater discharge laden with petroleum hydrocarbons in the river from the mine, from mine number 7. And this is, as I understand it, this is not the first time or the second time or the third time that they've seen stuff like this, and that didn't happen when y'all were down there.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a full complement of union workers in the mine, it allows management to focus on the things that they should be focused on. You've got managers underground actually working a mine of coal, and that's not their job. Their job is to make sure that the mines are in safely, and efficiently, and that, things like what you're talking about don't happen. These discharges don't get into the environment. So, this is a cause of being shorthanded, and it's a cause of not focusing on the broader business plan.
Brian Sanson, International Secretary Treasurer for the United Mine Workers of America. Is there anything else that how can folks help? And is there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
We've received over $2 million in donations that go directly to the strikers. There's no administrative fees taken out. Nobody from the union gets paid. That money goes directly from the donator to the striker. You can go to our website, you can donate, and that money is completely earmarked just for the folks in Alabama on strike. It's www.umwa.org. And I think that's one of the things that folks can do to help these people the most. We pay them strike benefits, we pay their health care while they're on strike, but it's not the money they're used to making, and any additional donations help these folks. And it's hard come time for school. It's hard at Christmas time. All these folks are, God bless every one of them, because they're some of the finest people I've ever seen. But this is a toll on every family down there.
Absolutely. Brian Sanson, International Secretary Treasurer of the UMWA, thanks for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Thank you all, and thanks for all you do.
Appreciate it. Before we head to, it's just I can't understand it, and I can't understand how no federal or state politician is doing anything. I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something Brian said earlier in that interview that really stood out to me is that it feels as if both Warrior Met and their allies are trying to teach Alabama and Southern workers a lesson with this strike. If you dare have the audacity to stand up for yourself, this is the sort of obstruction you're going to get. And so, I think that's why it's so important that all of us as working class people rally behind these miners, because their fight is ultimately our fight as well.
Yeah. Before we head to a break, I wanted to touch on this. Congress passed an omnibus bill last week that includes increased funding for the NLRB, and shortly after that, the NLRB union was able to come to a new agreement with the General Counsel to expand telework to 6 days per pay period, 6 days every 2 weeks. That's what my telework agreement is. That avoids a reversal to the pre-pandemic telework posture and makes NLRB jobs more competitive in this market. So, I think folks are still figuring out what all is in this big omnibus. Some of it's pretty good, some of it's pretty cool, and some of it is, of course, pretty bad. But I wanted to update y'all on that since we've been following this story. You'll recall that the NLRB has been flat funded since 2010 or 2014, which amounts to a 25% funding cut when you account for inflation. And obviously, since 2010, 2014, we do not have 25% fewer workers in the United States, right? We have more workers, and we have more union elections, and we have more unfair labor practices. But as a result of this effective funding cut, the agency was unable to hire new staff, unable to fill positions as people retired, as people got new jobs, and wait times for the agency's work product increased. In fact, field staff, according to the NLRB, is half of what it used to be, while union election petitions and unfair labor practice charges are up significantly. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what happens when you put more work on fewer people, right? So this funding increase is $25 million on top of what they have gotten for the past 10 years, which was about $275 million. So this increase is, a little less than 10%, which, matches inflation for 1 year, for this year. it's better than flat funding, but they certainly need more, and I'm really worried that this is going to be the last increase that they get in a long time because of the Republicans controlling the House and the Republicans refusing to fund law enforcement, because that's what the NLRB is, in a way, enforcing labor law. But they don't want to enforce the law when the recipient of that enforcement would be rich folks or bosses. Joseph Webb, an NLRB attorney in Birmingham and president of the NLRB Union, Local 10, said this in a statement to the Valley Labor Report on the funding increase and the telework agreement. Quote, "This is a wonderful end of the year for the NLRB, and we're thrilled that the General Counsel has decided to stand with us in the same way she's standing for workers across the United States. NLRB Local 10 members are committed to ensuring that our allotment of the increased budget and the increased telework benefits result in improvements in the rights of every worker employed in the jurisdiction of NLRB Region 10. So, glad to see that from them.
Yeah, glad to get a little bit of good news.
A little bit of good news. So we're going to go ahead and take our last break. We will be right back talking about the paper mill lockout and wrapping up heading into overtime. So stay tuned. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
Energy Alabama supports consumers and is a leader in advocating for them. We have been able to successfully fight off utility rate increases in the state, reduce fees for electric vehicles, increase electric vehicle infrastructure spending, and secured a $100 million refund by Alabama Power after the utility overcharged customers for fuel. To learn more about our work advocating for customers and join the fight, go to energyalabama.org.
There's a lot of talk about a shortage of workers, but that's not the case with IBW 558. We have provided our customers over 3,000 workers and performed over 3 million man-hours in a pandemic year. With 8,000 OJT hours, 900 classroom hours, OSHA 30, and a state license, our members receive the equivalent of a master's degree. That's what makes IBW 558 the right choice for your electrical needs. Look us up at Facebook or at IBW558.org.
North Alabama DSA is looking for folks to work for a better North Alabama. They prioritize mutual aid, municipal activism, and union solidarity. Contact them on social media or dsanorthalabama@gmail for more information.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Hometown Action is a grassroots organization building a multiracial working class movement for racial, gender, economic, and environmental justice in Alabama's rural communities. We stand in solidarity with Alabama workers and are proud to support the Valley Labor Report's efforts to inform and build the Southern worker movement. Please visit hometownaction.org and follow our social media channels at Hometown Action to learn more about how you too can get involved to make the South a better place for all workers. Solidarity, y'all.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. You are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Hearing that ad from Ed Flesh Ferentz of Ohio reminded me that last week I was on his program, America's Workforce, which is, I'm pretty sure, America's only daily union radio program. They are live in Ohio every weekday afternoon. And he told me that this year, 2023, is going to be their 30th year on the radio.
That's great.
And so I told him, I was like, well, this is going to be our third. So we're catching up. So I really enjoyed it, as I always do when I go on America's Workforce. You should check it out. And if you don't listen to America's Workforce regularly, then you absolutely should. It's a fantastic, really, the guy gets, generally what he does is he'll hit, I don't know, like half a dozen news segments really quickly, just some headlines and a little bit of commentary. Then he'll have two guests during the show. And it's almost always just like a local business manager from a trade union or a local union president or a steward, or talking about a grievance case or something. Like it's really cool. You're able to get an idea of what is going on in local unions across the country. Highly recommend it. Couldn't recommend it enough. And so if you want to listen to my appearance on the program, on his program, then you can search the title that he has for the article that they did up for my appearance on it is Morrison Rebukes Alabama Senator for Chastising Millennials' Work Ethic. So check that out. We talked about the paper mill lockout, and we talked about our response to U.S. Senator from Alabama Tommy Tuberville saying that young folks don't work somehow. So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Always have a good time. So let's talk about this. Nearly 500 paper workers are still locked out by Westrock, which is a paper company at an Alabama paper mill in Cottonton, which is just south of Columbus, Georgia. Their mill, I spent a couple of days. I actually just got back really late on Thursday night. I appreciate Jared Leggett, who is acting vice president for the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union here, Local 27 in Huntsville. He is a NASA employee and representing NASA employees. He drove me down there and drove me back. We got back just short of 11 on Thursday night. And it's actually so close to the Alabama-Georgia line that my phone I was so confused the whole time I was there because I never knew what time zone I was in, because my phone would say 3 and then the next minute it would say 4 and then the next minute it'd say 3:13. It was so confusing. I could never rely on my phone. That was very irritating. Westrock is trying to remove penalties for long hours and 7-day weeks that these workers have had in their contracts for as long as the mill has been open. Those penalties being the Sunday premium and what's known as hog law in the industry. To help y'all understand the importance of these provisions, these protections against overwork, though, I want to explain their schedule really quick. I've done this on the show before, but they've been locked out now. They've been locked out for 3 months, since October the 6th. So I want to explain again the schedule that they work really quick. It's called the Reverse Southern Swing Shift, and it's 7-day weeks. And it's in 3 rounds. The first round, they work a 7-day week from midnight to 8 a.m. Then they get 1 day off. 1 day off. And then they work another 7 days from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Then they get 1 day off before they do another 7 days from 8 to 4. And then they get 3 days off. Wow, right? So that's the Reverse Southern Swing Shift, and that's their normal schedule is 7/8, 3 cycles in a row. But these workers have been working 7/12s more often than they're working 7/8s. And a 16-hour shift isn't uncommon, and sometimes they're even asked to stay beyond that. Even with these provisions in the contract, get this, over 40% of all the hours worked in this mill are overtime. Nearly half of every single hour that they work is overtime. I talked to one worker. He said his average over the last 2 years is actually 49%. So it is actually effectively half of all the time that he worked was over 40 hours a week. It's just insane. So they rightly worry that if these penalties are taken out, the company will work them even more than they already are. So let's talk about what those penalties are. The penalties are Sunday premium and hog law. Sunday premium states that any Sunday that you work, you get time and a half at least in their contract. You get time and a half at least, and if you've already worked 40, then you get double time on Sunday. And they set that up because originally, right, folks didn't even want to work on Sunday at all.
Right. It's a day for family,
It's a day for family,
church.
Worship, church, rest. And so paper mills, to get people to work on Sunday, they said, look, I understand working 7 days a week. That's tough. And so to compensate you for the sacrifice that you're making to the company to make, damn paper, we'll pay you time and a half. We'll pay you time and a half, or we'll pay you double time. And that's going to be your compensation. That's going to, that's us, giving an olive branch to you, saying, I understand you don't want to work on Sundays, so this is what we'll do for you. And so they've had this mill open since 66. They've had that the whole time, right? And they're wanting to take it away. And it's not that they're not even saying at the table, we don't have the money for it. We don't have the money, because they couldn't say that. They're a publicly traded company. You can go right now and look at WestRock's profits. They made more money than they ever have in the history of the company in 2021. They made $3.4 billion in profit. That's so much money, $3.4 billion in profit, that if they just took half of it, and divvied it up equally between all of their 50,000 employees globally, that'd be like a $30,000 bonus for each employee. You just take half of their profits. It's insane, and they're trying to take this from them. The other one that they're trying to take out of the contract is hog law. That states that if we ask you to work 16 hours, but beyond 16 hours, which is ungodly, right? Working beyond 16 hours is insane. That's not safe. If we do that, then the whole shift turns into time and a half. You get time and a half for the whole shift. Not just if the shift turns into 17 hours, you don't just get time and a half for the 17th hour, you get it for the whole shift. And that's it's really not even meant to be a bonus for these people. What it's meant to do is to discourage management from even allowing this to happen in the first place, right? You shouldn't be working people more than 16 hours. And so this is there to disincentivize the company from doing that and to incentivize the company to properly staff the mill so that you don't have to ask people to stay for 20 hours, for 24 hours in a row. That's insane. And so the company's trying to take this out. They're already working with these provisions. 40 to 50% of their hours are overtime. And so they're like, no way. No way. If we take these provisions out, you're going to work us even more than we already are.
Right.
Which is obvious, right? I mean, duh. Obviously, that's what would happen. In addition to their concerns about overwork, the union says that if they work the same hours, just the same hours, which, presumably they're going to be working even more, especially the first few months to make up for the lost production during the lockout. They say that if they just work the same hours with those provisions being removed under the new contract that they offered that the workers rejected, it'd amount to a 10% pay cut. A 10% pay cut. In the year of our Lord, 2022, with 10% inflation, that means these people would be taking a 20% pay cut when you account for inflation if they accepted what this company was trying to give to them in a year of record profits. The executive team saw a 53% raise in 2022 as an average across all of them. A 53% raise. While they're asking these people to take a 20% pay cut. So I'm working on a follow-up piece for The Real News. I wrote an article about this lockout when it started back in early October. And I'm working on another piece for them. I'm working on another piece for them that's going to be coming out here in the next week or so. And as part of that longer piece, I just wanted to get a feel for the political reaction. I obviously knew that none of the politicians were helping these people, but I wanted to see if I could get anything crazy, get anybody saying anything crazy on the record. And if not, it would just be a short thing in the article. Well, I got somebody saying something crazy on the record. When I called Alabama State Representative Debbie Wood, a Republican from Lynette, Alabama, I asked her what she thought about this situation, and she said, and I quote, I mean immediately, like it was not, she did not hesitate. And I quote, I am very much on the side of management, unquote. Now, to be fair to her, she also said after saying that she's on the side of management that she had no idea what was going on. She just knows, whose side she typically is going to be on, right. And so she's made up her mind and doesn't need to know all the pesky facts. Yeah, I mean, literally, she said something like, "quote, you can pull up my report." Since I got that quote, I was like, I'm very much on the side of management. That needs to be a headline somewhere, right? So I reached out to the Alabama Political Reporter. You can find the reporting there. And it's something like she said, I've not been made privy to, what the offers are between management and the union. And it's like, the lady doesn't even know what's going on. There's no idea what's going on here. She just knows that workers are standing up for themselves, and I don't like that. Mm-hmm. So after I told her what was going on, so I spent like 30, 40 minutes on the phone with her, and I've got it on recording, and I don't know, maybe I'll release it at some point. I might release it in tandem with the Real News article so that they can link to it. But so I spent a long time on the phone with her explaining what was going on, and so, she maintained her position that she's on the side of management, because apparently something from the Cottonton mill has to be done to make the Lynette mill work. There's another West Rock mill in Lynette in her district that is apparently dependent on the product from the Cottonton mill. And so she was like, well, these people need to get the work so that my people can have a job. And I was like, is it necessary for, is it really necessary for West Rock to take from these people in Cottonton? After I had explained all this to her, I asked her if it's necessary for people, for West Rock to take from Cottonton to keep people in Lynette employed. And she said, I don't think they're taking from Cottonton. After I explained to her everything that I just explained to you.
Yeah, apparently a 10% pay cut does not count.
Apparently that's not taking from Cottonton.
Which, by the way, the 10% pay cut on those employees, and you're talking several hundred, what kind of impact is that going to have on the community?
Right.
Right, because those are folks that are spending money right there in their local community, at their local shops. They're getting gas at the local gas station.
Right.
This is not money that's, being sucked up and sent out of state to New York and Wall Street and places like that. So, that's the thing that these political officials need to remember, is that when working class people are losing income, the entire economy of their district is going to suffer.
Yeah. I asked several other Republican elected officials in the area, and most of them did not answer me. Some of them did. The ones that did said that they didn't really have a comment on it, that they similar to hers, they said they weren't sure what the issues were, which is like, let's just point out for a second that that's ridiculous. Something going on within 30 minutes or an hour of you, a lockout, the first lockout that this mill has had, the first strike or, labor dispute that they've had since 1973, the largest employer in Russell County. Oh, I don't know what's going on. How do you not know what's going on? How does that not, the first day that this happens, or the first day that you become aware of it, how do you not pick up the phone and call the union and call management and figure out what the hell's going on? How is that not the first thing that you do as an elected official in the area?
Right. Well, and that's something else that we learned through covering these struggles, is how our elected officials are so out of touch with what's really happening in their district. I mean, the largest employer in the county.
Yeah.
Impacting several hundred folks who live in your community, who have families in your community, and you don't really know what's happening? Wow.
District 2 Russell County Commissioner Scott Chambers, a Republican from Phoenix City, said that he has no comment on the situation due to his lack of familiarity.
I at least respect them saying, I don't know anything, so I'm not going to comment on it, which is better than saying, I don't know anything, but I'm definitely on management's side.
Yeah. So I asked him, some of these people, I was able to get in touch with them in email, some of them over the phone. So I had this guy on the phone. And so I asked him, I was like, well, I've been reporting on this for a while. I'm, pretty familiar with these folks. Are you interested in being familiar with it? And he said, quote, not really. I was like, okay, well, all right. It's just bonkers, man. That's Looney Tunes. I don't know. I mean, so, but look, listen to this though. Even though Republican Representative Debbie Wood said she is on the side of management, and other Republicans variously said, I don't have a comment because, I don't know, or, I don't want to know, I don't care, right? I don't want to let the Democrats off the hook because actually the Democrats represent the district that the mill is in. The Republican county commissioners, obviously some of them represent the district of the mill, but all of the Republican state reps and senators, they represent districts just outside of the mill. So I called everybody kind of in that general area, but so Debbie Wood doesn't represent the mill, the area that the mill's in. It's just kind of close to it. Same with these other Republicans. But Democrats actually represent the mill. And not one of them responded to a request for comment. Not one of them. So first off, I want to mention State Representative Barry Forte, Democrat from Eufaula. Workers tell me that he did, and so I want to make sure that folks understand this. Folks know this, that I'm not hiding stuff. Folks tell me that he did show up on the picket line the first day of the lockout and hand out his business card or whatever and say that he supports them. And so, that's good. That's fair enough. But they said that they haven't heard from him since. The union leadership says that he has not called them. I have not been able to get him to respond to me. And so it's like, what are you doing? What's going on there?
Well, if it's the same Barry Forte I'm familiar with, I believe he is 85 years old.
Yeah, well, looking at his picture, that doesn't surprise me.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that has anything to do with it, but for all we know, he could literally be out of commission right now. either way, there's a problem when you have a major labor struggle in a district.
And no one's hearing from you. No one's hearing from your staff. You know, like presumably these people have staff, right? The staff could call the union and figure out what they can do as representatives of Representative Barry Forte.
Yeah, so I don't know Mr. Forte. I don't know anything about his record. You know, like I said, I mentioned his age, but yeah, that's concerning. That's concerning when you have a major labor struggle happening and there doesn't appear to be any political representation for the workers involved.
State Representative Jerry Gray, Democrat from Opelika, did not respond. State Representative Peblin Warren, Democrat from Tuskegee, did not respond. State Senator Bill Beasley, who, like Barry Forte, represents the district that the mill is in, Democrat from Clayton, did not respond. District 7, Russell County Commissioner Larry Screws, Democrat from Hurtsboro, did not respond. District 5, Russell County Commissioner Caddy Epps, Democrat from Phoenix City, did not respond. District 4, Russell County Commissioner Ronnie Reed, Democrat, Phoenix City, did not respond. None of them. Some of these people, Caddy Epps and Larry Screws, didn't even have their phone numbers listed on the, like, so when you go to the Russell County Commissioner's website, you can see a list of the county commissioners. And somehow, like, all the Republicans have their personal cell phone number on them. And most of the Democrats, 2 of the 3 Democrats, have the cell phone, have the office number of the county commission's office listed under their name. And so I call this number that's listed under their name, and they're like, you know, county commission office, whatever. I was like, this is the number under, you know, Caddy Epps. And she was like, well, this isn't her number. I don't know her number. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know her number? That's crazy.
Right. Like, and that's something that I have observed over the years in dealing with politics in Alabama, and I'm sure it's elsewhere, but, you know, I can only speak from my experience, but it's amazing the lack of transparency among local and state government, and sometimes it's amazing how difficult it can be to just track down some of these people and actually have a real conversation with some of these people. Yeah, it's not always easy to track these folks down and to get them to actually respond to constituents, and that cuts across party, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. It's bonkers. It's bonkers, man. I mean, honestly, like, the Republicans were way, way more responsive to me.
Yeah. May not like the response, but they were responsive.
Yeah.
And frankly, I've heard that from a lot of folks across the state in terms of contacting legislators as well. Obviously, Republicans have a supermajority in the legislature, but, you know, it's not unusual to hear from people saying, hey, I never can get much response out of my Democrat senator or Democrat representative, but I can get it for Republican such and such. I don't like what he tells me, but, you know, he'll respond to me.
Seriously. That was my experience. I mean, half of these people, like, there were only, let me count. State Representative Joe Lovern, Republican from Auburn, that's 1. Jay Hovey, Republican from Auburn, that's 2. Randy Price, Republican from Opelika, that's 3. And Rod Costello, a Republican county commissioner from Phoenix City, 4. Only 4 of the Republicans didn't respond to me, whereas every single Democrat did not respond to me. 7. 7 Democrats did not respond.
Disappointing. And, I mean, that also, you think about some of the things we've talked about in reference to the Alabama Democratic Party and how they can't get media coverage and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, here's an issue happening in your region.
Right.
The media is interested in covering it. You should jump on that, right? You should jump on that. Just from a political point of view, if nothing, I mean, aside from the fact that these are your constituents that you should actually be trying to assist and represent, I mean, just as a politician, right? Why would you not take advantage of an opportunity like that? Yeah, it's very frustrating.
It's insane. And you know, and I even called the chair of the party, Randy Kelly. And now on the issue, he had good things to say, and you can read that You can read his statement on the issue in the follow-up piece that I'm going to have in the Real News. That's going to be in there. But for the original piece, I tried to get his help contacting Barry Forte, and he was like, I don't know him. I don't have his phone number. What? What? You don't have his phone number? And he told me, did you like research him and like try to find his phone number yourself? And I was like, yes, obviously I did.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, chair of the state party doesn't have the phone number of a state representative. I mean, there's only like, 3 dozen of these people? You ought to have each of them on speed dial. Chair of the state party, don't know the representatives. One of the 3 that you have. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't mean to necessarily defend Mr. Kelly there, but something he said in the interview we had with him was that, well, he kind of mentioned more or less the quality of the existing Democrats in office, and maybe there's something there.
Could be.
Maybe there's some connection there in that comment, and some of the lack of availability we're seeing from some office holders, because like you said, there's not a lot of them.
Yeah.
When Republicans have a supermajority in the legislature and something equivalent across local offices and judicial offices, at least do well with what you got. And that's often been, I know, a frustration you and I have both had over the years with Alabama Democrats, is even when you do have folks in office, what are they doing? And are they using it, fully acknowledging they may be in a minority position from a vote standpoint, there's still plenty you can do as an advocate and as a representative of your constituents.
Yeah.
And it's not divisive to have expectations.
No. We got a super chat from Strawn McCallum. Solidarity from South Carolina. No surprises here at all. The Democrat-Republican parties are both instruments of bourgeois class dictatorship. Yes. Yep. So as we're rounding out the main show, just a reminder for the people that are listening on the radio, you can find us online, Facebook, YouTube, at the Valley Labor Report, and you can continue watching us for another half of the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. But as we're wrapping this up, we've just got some thoughts about some end of the year reflections. So Adam, take it away. What are how does the year in review look for you?
So, I just try to think about what have we been up to this year. We did a little bit of this last year as well, just to recap some of our activities, some of what we've been talking about on the show. One of the things that we did, and we referenced it earlier today, is we wrote an op-ed responding to an op-ed from Senator Tommy Tuberville. The title is called "Working People Should Reject the Lectures from Millionaires Like Senator Tuberville." It was published back in November. As Jacob mentioned, he has been covering the paper mill lockout in Cottonton, Alabama for the Real News Network. Great piece he put out earlier this fall when it first happened. If you haven't seen that, definitely recommend you check it out, with more on the way. And Jacob also wrote about our old
friend of the show,
Tim James. Wrote about Tim James for the Real News Network, perhaps other outlets. I'm trying to remember there.
I don't think so. I think that was only.
Okay, I know you had some hits on Tim James, and then you had some hits on Steve Marshall for ignoring child labor in Alabama.
Yeah, that hit on Steve Marshall came out in Jacobin and the Alabama Political Reporter.
Right. One of the things I'm most proud of this year is that we were part of the planning committee to bring labor notes to Alabama. Jacob and I had an opportunity to attend the big Labor Notes conference this summer in Chicago. It was the first time for both of us, and we met up with some comrades while we were there. It was an amazing experience, and afterwards we immediately had conversations with different people about how to do something on a smaller scale, but similar down here in Sweet Home, Alabama. And so we helped pull off the Alabama Troublemaker School in October, located in Montebello, and we had over 120 folks attend. It was a very successful event, if I can say so myself. Jacob moderated a really great panel with our dear friends Kim Kelly and Max Alvarez. I did a couple stewards workshops with a good brother from the CWA here in Huntsville. And I wrote a little reflection about this experience that Labor Notes published on the Troublemakers blog. But for me, that was probably the coolest thing we did. It's not up there with Strike Fest. 2021, we had Strike Fest. It's hard to compete with that. But 2022, I would say the Alabama Troublemakers School is up there as one of the coolest things. Definitely look forward to doing future events like that. And speaking of Max and Kim, they were two of the excellent authors that we hosted on the show this year to discuss their new books. Max's book is called The Work of Living. Working people talk about their lives in the year the world broke. Kim's book is titled Fight Like Hell. And we also had Matthew Huber come on the show to talk about Climate Change as Class War, his book that came out this year. Damon Garcia came on to talk about The God Who Riots.
I really enjoyed all those conversations, and I just wanted to point out for Kim's book specifically, that one that got on several book lists.
Yes.
The New Yorker and Esquire both put that in their best books of 2022 list. BuzzFeed put it on the 25 books from 2022 that you will love, and Literary Hub put it on their 38 favorite books of 2022. So she really got around with that one, and it's pretty cool. She's been going on, sometimes bands will go on tour. She's been going on a book tour all over the country, hawking her wares, and so that's really cool to see that kind of success from somebody that I feel comfortable calling a friend. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kim has been a great friend of the show and supported the show, and Max as well. And so love to see their work come to fruition. Highly recommend them if you haven't read them. As far as what we talked about on the show, beyond talking to some really great authors, we continued our coverage of the Warrior Met strike in Brookwood, including today. That's how we decided to close the year, was with an update from UMWA. And we looked at developing campaigns throughout the state of Alabama, including this year's historic prison strike. We, of course, had a lot of discussion about the railroads, talking to multiple members of Rail Workers United, as well as journalists like Mel Buer and Jonah Furman, who have been doing some of the best work out there on this issue. Very proud of our special Labor Day episode we did, featuring a Unions 101 panel, as well as some Unions 102 in overtime. If you're new to unions or just want a refresher, I highly, highly recommend checking those out. The Unions 101 videos. We had a fantastic, diverse panel of, seriously, some of the smartest young organizers in the country. Pretty top-notch people. And so, really proud of that.
I really enjoyed that. And you can check out the full, all of this stuff. You can always go back and check it out. But I really enjoyed that. I love having Unions 101 type stuff. That's something that we do every now and then, and we try to make it a little bit different each time. We have done a Unions 101 ourselves. David and I did back a couple of years ago. Then we've had different guests on. We had Connor on to do a couple shows like that, and then we had this panel. So I don't know what we're going to do for our next Unions 101 show, but already excited about it.
Yeah, and we believe in popular education. That's part of why we do this show. It's not just like news and our commentary, but we like to at least try to educate folks too. And so definitely going to be doing more of that in the year ahead. We also talk politics on the show. We covered the elections this year, interviewing candidates for the May primary, the August Huntsville election, and the November general election. Personally, I had fun doing a deep dive on crooked Casey Werdinski and covering the Huntsville school board race, while I know Jacob enjoyed sparring with Tim James quite a bit during his failed gubernatorial nomination.
An embarrassing third place behind the Slovenian ambassador. I don't even remember her name anymore.
It was Linda, also Lindy, depending on, I guess, the commercial.
Yeah. Tim James, like a household, or James, his daddy was a governor, and he came behind a no-name Slovenian ambassador.
Yeah.
Very funny.
So we also talked a lot about the state of the Alabama Democratic Party, interviewing the previous chair, Chris England, as well as the current chair, Randy Kelly. along with discussions from multiple SDEC members, and of course throwing our 2 cents in there. As I mentioned earlier, we did some educational and training segments. We did some labor history with a new monthly series I started this fall, along with some fascinating interviews, such as Mark Dudzik, who talked about the U.S. Labor Party effort in the 1990s. We had an interview with British miner John Dunn, who was actually in the chat this morning. I don't know if you're still with us, Mr. Dunn, but shout out to you. A British miner who was involved in the coal strikes of the 70s and the 80s in the UK. And I really loved that conversation we had with Mr. Dunn. We've had some great historians on the show, like Harvey J.K. and Ahmed White, share their expertise with us. Really always enjoy those opportunities. As far as companies that came up a lot this year, Hyundai definitely came up a lot with their legal problems involving both racism and child labor. What a duo. I can't even watch their commercials on TV without thinking of both of those subjects, actually.
Imagine driving a Hyundai.
Right. Yeah. So, way to go with your PR. Anyway, back during the legislative session, we spent a lot of time covering the so-called anti-riot bill. We did some extensive coverage of that, interviewing multiple activists who were fighting the bill, especially our friends at Hometown Action. So shout out to them. Along with the author of the bill himself, Mr. Representative Alan Treadway,
that was fun.
Which was a fascinating conversation. We continued our coverage of the Starbucks unionization drive, including right here in the South, including interviews with worker organizers in Tennessee, Birmingham, and our friends in Scottsboro. We also continued covering the wave of nonprofit organizing, including right here in Alabama at the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center down in Montgomery. And of course, we talked to workers, organizers, and leaders from a variety of unions, including our own unions, IATSE and AFGE, along with the Ironworkers, IBEW, RWDSU, the Machinists, the Teamsters, the UAW, and a whole lot more that I probably forgot on that list.
Yeah.
And that's it as far as stuff with the show. Don't know if you had anything to add there. I had a couple things to talk about sort of separate from the show, just reflecting at the end of the year, but
yeah, no, that's it. I'm looking at this that you've got done up for the non-show stuff, and there's definitely some real good stuff that happened this year outside of the show. Funny enough, we weren't the only people doing cool stuff this year. So
yeah, believe it or not, there were other people doing good stuff. And shout out to Lee Baines and the Glorifiers for their album that came out this year, Old Time Folks, came out in August. The album earned much-deserved recognition by being included in Rolling Stone's 100 Best Albums of the Year, as well as AO.com's End of the Year Roundup. For those of you who don't know, Lee Baines is a true brother to the movement. He was instrumental in making last year's Strike Fest happen, and there's no way we'd have raised as much money as we did for those miners if not for Lee. So he helped pull it all together, and on top of him and the band putting on a fantastic show for the crowd. This year saw the new album come out, and a couple of songs I really like are Outlaws and Rednecks. Being that we're on a talk radio show, the song Lizard People is certainly one that resonates as well. Check that one out if you haven't listened. So great folks putting out great music while advocating for justice. Can't beat that. They really deserve these honors and a lot more, and I speak for all of us at the Valley Labor Report in wishing them much success in the new year ahead. I'm a fan of music, and while it's not really relevant to the show per se, I'm just going to drop some of my favorites from the year. Some of my favorite artists dropped new music this year, including Father John Misty, the Mars Volta, which definitely brought me back to high school, Jack White, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the great Kendrick Lamar. So they all put out new albums this year that I really enjoyed. As far as TV and movies.
Speaking of albums that came out that made you feel like you were in high school, Under Oath put out a new album this year and definitely made me feel like I was in high school again in a good way.
Yeah, you love it when bands that you connected with as a teenager then come back years later to put out music that can still resonate. I mean, the Red Hot Chili Peppers have been doing this for decades, and I still dug some of the songs they were putting out in 2022, so that's pretty impressive. Me personally, I'm not a big TV guy, so I can't say I watched a ton of TV this year. I'm not really one for those like prestige shows. I have seen Mad Men all the way through. I love that. That's now several years old. So as far as current stuff, the best show I saw this year was Andor. If you are a fan of History from Below, I think you'll dig this show. You don't have to be a Star Wars person or even much of a sci-fi fan. In many ways, the sci-fi Star Wars setting kind of fades into the background as you're sucked into the stories of people both resisting and participating in oppression and how those struggles intersect. Because you have rebels and you have the Empire, and you kind of get to know people on the ground floor of each side, which I found refreshing. It's more a story about revolution and empire than space lasers and robots. Not really a huge fan of all the new Star Wars stuff that's come out in the last decade or so. Just hasn't really connected with me, but I put this in a different league. Some great acting, great writing, great pacing. So if you're looking for something to check out, I do recommend Andor. Stick with it till at least episode 3. First 2 episodes are the slowest. A lot of exposition there. But if you stick through episode 3, I'd be surprised if you weren't hooked. And you can't really expect much entertainment industry attention to like serious issues. You know, most of us know that the entertainment industry is now down to like a handful of companies. You've got, Disney owns just about everything, and then just a couple of others. And so these mega corporations, you can't really expect them to grapple honestly and seriously with real topics like empire and revolution and dehumanization, the sacrifices of resisting oppression, the banality of evil, how people interact with systems that shape our lives. And I thought it was pretty interesting and entertaining on that front. And that's a pleasant surprise for me. I'll take that as a pleasant surprise. So that was kind of the one show that stuck with me this year.
The one new show that's really stuck with me is Abbott Elementary. It's a fantastic show, and I think, similarly, I was surprised at how well it gets like the class stuff that working teachers go through. The principal's a bumbling idiot, even if it does make her kind of likable. And in the next season, they're going to be dealing with issues with charter schools, and the way that they set it up, it seems like they're going to have a good take on it. So I'm looking forward to the next season. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. I
always cringe when I see new shows coming on about schools, because I just, fear, as a former teacher and with so many teachers in my family, I fear the way the teachers are going to be depicted.
Have you been able to see Abbott Elementary?
I've seen a few episodes of it, and based on, what I've heard from you, what I've heard from other people I trust, and what I've seen so far, it seems like they really do it justice and try to have an accurate depiction of what teaching's like, and not just beat up on the teachers or anything like that. So that's definitely refreshing on mainstream TV. Something else that I did this year was I got caught up to One Piece, which has like 1,000 episodes. It's like an anime about pirates, and so I finally got caught up to One Piece. And so they've been they started releasing episodes in like 93 or 94 or something ridiculous, and so they've got 1,000 episodes, and I got caught up. So I am now watching new episodes as they come out. I enjoy that. I also finally watched Gurren Lagann. Had never seen that before. I enjoyed it. It was good. So I think we can probably wrap it up there. There was a couple of plugs I wanted to make sure we dropped, including the UMWA Strike Pantry. We heard from the Secretary-Treasurer earlier from the UMWA. You can support the striking families at paypal.me/UMWA Strike Pantry. And our friends Obed Edom dropped a new album recently, Done Up in Jade Like Green Waters. So check out their Bandcamp. That's Obed Edom. You can leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR, and you can buy a hat or give us some money, make a little donation. We sure would appreciate it at tvlr.fm.
We're actually, I think this is going to be our first episode that's going to be on Unclaimed Mysteries Radio, which is a Huntsville-based internet radio station. From their description, they do 1970s FM underground radio style, eclectic local and regional music with experimental sounds, noisy and otherwise, Huntsville, Alabama arts, culture, politics, audio, theater, comedy. So lots of stuff there. You can listen on Live 365. Just Google Unclaimed Mysteries Radio.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Always happy to expand our partnerships and collaborations.
Absolutely. So with that, we are going to go ahead and head out of here. We're going to go into overtime, where we're going to be playing some clips, commenting on some more news of the day, and it's going to be fun. So find us on YouTube, Facebook at The Valley Labor Report. Until then, see you next week. All right. Let's come back. All right, so we are off the radio now. Thank you for staying with us. I appreciate it. Appreciate your interest in hanging out with us. We've got some great clips lined up for you in overtime today. We're going to be playing a clip from CNBC, which is going to be fun. We're going to be playing a clip from Mark Walsh. That's going to be fun. And yeah, so hang out with us in overtime, and we will be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. You are still listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show. We are now in overtime. Like I've said, we got some good clips for you. Adam, you had a couple things you wanted to riff on?
Yeah, there was just a couple things on my mind before we get back into the agenda that I wanted to talk about. Today is New Year's Eve, so one thing that always sticks out for me for New Year's Eve is football. And so I wanted to take a moment just to mention that there's been some developments with college football players and their ability to unionize. That's a story to keep your eye on. It's a story that we're going to dive into more in 2023. Some of you may know that the players at Northwestern University several years ago, this would have been roughly a decade ago, maybe a little bit less, they attempted to form the first college football players union, and they were essentially stopped by the NLRB because their status as an employee was rejected. Cut to today, and a lot has happened in those past several years in college football regarding money. The players themselves have a lot more leverage now than they have maybe ever, because of new rules with name, image, and likeness, NIL. Players are now getting paid not just under the table, but over the table, actually getting shares of some of the ginormous revenue being created around college football and to some extent college basketball as well. But so players are actually starting to get a share of the money through NIL, and they also have more leverage through the transfer portal, allowing them to transfer schools without the penalties that used to be in place in doing so. So that's given them more ability to negotiate and act like a free agent would in the professional world. There was a ruling recently from the National Labor Relations Board regarding a couple schools out west in the Pac-12 conference that seems to indicate that if players were to attempt to unionize now under the current Labor Relations Board and the current General Counsel, they may get much further than they did previously. And I have not studied the ruling in depth enough to tell you definitively, like, yes, they are now eligible to create a union that looks like, any other private sector union. But it certainly is pointing in that direction. So that's something that I wanted to mention because I know a lot of folks will be watching football today and tonight. I know a lot of my family is already plugged into the Alabama game by now. It started a few minutes ago. So just wanted to mention that football is a big thing for me. I am a sports fan and a football fan in particular. And I, for one, support the players. And I, for one, believe the players should have every right to unionize because they're the ones putting their body on the line. And without them putting their body on the line, there is no revenue to pay coaches millions of dollars or for ESPN to make millions of dollars or for other TV networks to make millions of dollars. Without those players, those young men putting their bodies on the line, that doesn't happen. So that's a story I want to keep an eye on next year. And the other thing I wanted to mention was just that as we move into a new year, definitely would love any feedback from our listeners, especially those of you who are, our loyal regular listeners. If you have any feedback about what you want to see in the new year, feel free to let us know. We've already talked about some ideas we have to expand the show next year and to make it a even bigger, better product for everybody. And so if you have any ideas on that front, definitely let us know.
Absolutely. So the Fed just increased interest rates again a short while ago in an effort to, quote unquote, help, quote unquote, the economy. And there was a clip circulating on Twitter a couple weeks ago or a week ago that just really, really underscores how much this attack on inflation by the Fed is just a war on workers. It's not actually attacking inflation. It's just hurting workers. Adam, let's play that clip.
Yeah, slogging for the first 6 months, more slogging. Yes, Joe. Thank you for having me, and good morning, everyone. I do think it will be a slog for the first half, certainly, of 23. So people who are coming out of 22 with that exhaustion you were mentioning should get ready for some more. We think it's going to be a slog for the Fed. We think it's going to be a slog for the markets. You know, Carol mentioned the consumer. The consumer is just really still very strong. They have cash balances at the banks that are 30% above where they were pre-pandemic. Even when you look at the lower income cohorts, they're still 12 to 15% above where they were pre-pandemic. So they have cash to spend. They've certainly demonstrated a desire to spend. We're seeing that. What they're spending on is changing, and they're moving more to experiences than goods, but they're spending, and they have confidence to spend because the jobs market is about as good as we've seen in the last 40 or 50 years. So they have a job, and they have confidence that they can get another job if they need to. So that's a really tough nut for the Fed to crack when the U.S. consumer is 70% of the economy. And so we think this is going to take time, and this is going to be a real slog for the next 8 to 9 months. Yes, the market is a discounting mechanism, and it will look forward, but we're not close to cutting. We're not close to pivot yet. And right now the market thinks we cut in November, and that's just too soon.
Americans have a job, and they have confidence they'll be able to get a job if they need one, and that's a tough nut for the Fed to crack.
Yeah, I'm glad you pulled that clip because sometimes it's hard for folks to read between the lines on what they say on these business networks. But this is like what they say 24 hours a day. It's something along those lines. And, you know, they have yet to explain to me, the Federal Reserve or any of their supporters on TV has yet to explain to me how their rising interest rates are going to cut inflation. In fact, I've heard comments from them under oath admitting that it's not going to do that. So what's it about then? Right? If it's real, if we're going to talk about inflation every time we mention interest rates, but then we go on the record and say, well, yeah, these aren't actually going to decrease inflation though. Right. We're making these interest rate increases, but no, we can't prove that that's actually going to fix the problem that they're ostensibly in response to.
Strom in the chat said, every hourly wage employee at my job just got a $3 an hour pay cut. That's insane. Great job market. Nope. And that's another part of the farcity of, you know, this the thing that
it's overblowing like how good things are, right? It's overblowing how good things are, and then makes it as if that would be a bad thing if they were that good.
Right.
Because it's not. That's to me, she painted a very rosy picture for the working class.
Right.
And I know consumer is not the same as working class, but you know, broadly, there's a lot. She was speaking about the masses.
Yeah.
Right.
And if the masses having 12%, you know, she said something, the lower income has 12% more in their bank account. I don't know if that's true or if that's not. But if that is true, and that's bad for the economy, what the hell is the economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is the economy if the lowest income folks have 12 to 15% more money in the bank, and that's bad for the economy? What the hell are these? What is that then?
Right. Yeah. What is the point of the economy at that point? Yeah, it's a war on working class people that's being conducted by the Federal Reserve, and this is not the first time. We saw this about 50 years ago.
Right.
With the rise of neoliberalism. We saw a very similar track from the Fed, and history is, if not repeating, at least rhyming right here.
Right. Yeah, and you know, if you'll go back and actually read the history on the Volcker shock, the precedent for crazily increasing interest rates in this way is not good. Inflation came down, but it was because the economy was stilted. Workers, and when I say the economy, I mean workers were put out of work, put out on the streets because they were out of a job. That's what I say. That's what I mean when I say that.
Right. Yeah, and that's what they're talking about. at the Federal Reserve is rising unemployment on purpose.
Right.
Like they want to raise unemployment. They want to take more money out of the hands of consumers, aka workers, because they're spending too much.
And because, like, if the thing is, their theory of this is that there's too much money going around in the economy, and so we got to take from the workers.
Meanwhile, like 3 families have half the wealth in the country.
Right. Yeah. Like if we really, I don't know. I'm not an economist. Maybe it would be good if we took some money out of the economy. Who the hell knows, right? But if we need to do that, why don't we take it from the people who have the damn money instead of taking it from us? Why don't we take it from them? If the deal is, oh, the prices are too high, well, tell them they can't put the prices that high. That's simple.
Yeah.
Tell them that because if you look at actually where the increase in prices from consumer goods has gone, consumer goods have increased, I don't know, like a lot of percent, right? And there's been studies out there about what is this going to? What is this going to? My bananas were, I don't know, my milk was this much last year and it's this much this year. And what's the difference? What's that delta going to? Well, over 50% of that delta is just going to profits.
Mm-hmm.
So just take it. Just take the profits. Just take the profits back and then give it back to the people.
Right.
There's more than one way to skin a cat. And if that's actually the issue, I don't know.
I mean, even Richard Nixon was willing to indulge in price controls.
Right.
I mean, that's no socialist by any stretch of the imagination, but even Nixon was willing to engage in price controls. And when you're talking about fuel and food, other essentials that are also coincidentally just happen to be dominated by a handful of monopolies in these industries, right? That's another piece of the story.
Right.
That
they've got
the Federal
ability.
Reserve is not addressing whatsoever.
Right. And it's not to say, and so last time we talked about the Fed, we got people like, oh, well, what do you want the Fed to do? They can only do 1 or 2 things, right? And it's like, well, maybe the Fed just shouldn't do anything. Like maybe it's not my job, like if I'm a janitor, right? It's not my job to, cut somebody's hair that walks in looking scraggly, right? So maybe they just shouldn't do anything, or they should do like less than they're doing right now. And they should be putting pressure on the Biden administration and saying, look, this inflation is not caused by workers having too much money, because that's an insane thing to think. And so if we want to deal with this inflationary crisis, Congress has to do something. The president has to do something. We can't fix everything.
Right.
And you just got to know your role. You just got to know your role. You got to assess the situation. And obviously, workers do not have so much money that it's a problem. Workers do not have so much money that we need to be disciplined with a recession. Okay? That's just asinine. It's absurd.
It is, but it's convenient for those who are in Congress and are in the White House to let the unelected Federal Reserve, this kind of obscure agency, be the one imposing austerity and recession.
Right. Well, and look at whatever you want to say about Trump, in some instances, his political instincts are better than Joe Biden's, because when the Federal Reserve was trying to do this under his administration, he attacked the Fed. He was like, look, we'll get these people out of here. We don't need interest rates because he saw what was going to happen, and he saw that if a recession happened under his watch, he was going to go out. He was going to go out. He wasn't going to get reelected. Why does Biden not have the political instincts of Donald Trump? Like, what a thing to say, but that's an accurate assessment of what's going on with these comparable things happening.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, because the way he responded to Jerome Powell,
yeah, like
and
obviously
the way Joe Biden has responded to Jerome Powell,
yeah,
is very
obviously
different.
it's not that Trump like cares about the workers so much. Like he was like, oh, but
he was willing to use his bully pulpit and be a bully,
right?
And sometimes that's what you have to do. Whereas in Joe Biden's case, it seems as if Powell and the Reserve are just doing what they want them to do, but conveniently don't have to have their fingerprints as much on it. That's what it seems to me. That there's no it's not as if the Biden administration or the congressional Democrats have really voiced much opposition at all to anything the Federal Reserve has done.
Anything about it. The AFL just recently came out condemning it like a couple of weeks ago, but they've been pretty quiet on it as well.
Yeah, I feel like they've been a little bit of asleep at it as well, because this is something that's impacting the entire economy and the entire American working class, really the entire global working class, because the way in which American fiscal policy impacts everybody.
We got a comment, direct message on Twitter, and you can, the best place probably, if you want to make sure to get your comment answered on the show, the best place is probably going to be texting the show, 844-899-8857. But I do try to keep a check on all of our various social media accounts, and so, I'll probably see it, but that's the best if you want us to answer the thing on the show. But we got this in a DM from Twitter. Dear TVLR crew, first time, long time. Appreciate the long time. At Christmas Eve dinner with my extended family, I talked a while with my uncle. It's always the uncles. How is that the case? How does that happen? That it's always the uncles. He's about 60 and is the happiest, nicest guy you'll meet. He also works in HR at a factory. I often enjoy talking labor news with him because he's always up to date, but usually has an opposing perspective. It sounds like you're kind of like me, like I enjoy arguing. Adam is not that way, I don't think. When I talked with him about the rail strike, I said the company acted in bad faith because they knew Congress would ram it through. He disputed that, saying they might have sided with workers, but I told him to look around and get real. I then opined that the sick day situation was unconscionable. He said that sick days are not as big a deal as most people make of it. He contends that sick days were not a priority for all workers, and their older workers didn't care as much about sick days and voted more for better retirement and pay, while younger workers were interested in time off. He also said the bargaining team was totally unrepresentative of the workforce as a whole. I'd love to hear your or a rail workers guest's perspective on that. In solidarity, Phil from Wisconsin. P.S. We also got hung up on if the majority of workers voted to reject the rail deal. I know a minority of the 12 unions voted down the contract, but I had been under the impression that the largest unions voted against it. Not sure where to find that info. So a few kind of questions there. The first one, I'll hit the last first, and that is the case that the majority of workers, unions representing the majority of workers, voted down the deal. It was only 4 of the 12 unions, but those were the largest unions, and they made up a majority, more than 50% of workers on the rails. Of the 115,000 workers on the rails, unions representing the majority of them voted it down. So even though, and that's why, right, that the Biden administration did not say in their statement about we're going to do, we're going to ram this down their throats. He said a majority of the unions have ratified the deal already. He did not say a majority of the workers or unions representing a majority of the workers, because that he couldn't say that. But that would sound better, right? If you got a majority of the workers on your side, wow, that sounds better. But he didn't. And that's why he didn't say that. Your uncle said that Congress might have sided with the workers. And I don't know. You told him to look around and get real, and it's like I don't know what else you can say.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there was an attempt by Bernie and a handful of others, but we see where that went.
Yeah, and that's never happened in the history of the Railway Labor Act.
Right.
For
130
years, this thing has been the law, and never, ever, ever has Congress and the president sided on, been with the rail workers.
Right.
So.
It was. You can look at the state of things now. You can look at the historical precedent. We all knew pretty clearly that if it was in the hands of Congress, it wasn't going to turn out well for the workers.
At least,
I do appreciate those who fought the good fight.
Right.
That very small handful of those who did that. But
yeah, the thing is, it's possible, but the preponderance of evidence would have suggested to you that was not the case. And if you're the railroads bargaining committee, the worst case scenario is that you go out 3 years and maybe they side with the workers and only give them 7 days of paid sick leave, which this is something to tell your uncle Warren Buffett made enough money in one day to pay for 15 sick days for all 115,000 rail workers in a year. Right? So that's like, the wealth disparity here is just ridiculous. Warren
Right.
Buffett,
So if you're going to say it's not really a big deal to the workers, well, it's really not a big deal to the company.
Right.
If we're being honest about it.
Yeah. So, you know, is it likely? It's not likely that Congress was going to side with them, but even if they did, the unions were asking for such a little bit that it's like, well, you know, it's better doing this now than having done it 3 years ago when they began bargaining, right? He said that sick days are not as big a deal as people make of it. And I don't know where it's difficult to, you know, all of the reporting that I've seen on it, people actually talking to rank and file rail workers, Jonah Furman, Mel Buer, Max Alvarez, all these people, Josh Idelson. Sick days has been the thing, right? And sick days has been the thing that has been put forward as the representation of these rail workers losing their lives to the rails more broadly. But that's always been I've never seen any of them. I have not seen a single rail worker put forward better retirement and more pay as their primary reason for voting down the contract. I've just never seen that.
Right.
And I feel
the work-life balance seems to be so much bigger.
Which is not to say that they don't deserve better pay or better retirement. Obviously, I think they do, right? I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I feel like compared to like a normal person or whatever, I feel like I've been following this pretty regularly. I've literally not seen it once. So I don't know where your uncle would be getting that. I don't know where he would be getting that. Seems like work-life balance is the thing that all these people, and I have seen on the flip side, I've seen young workers talk about the work-life balance, talk about the sick days. I've seen old workers. I've seen people that have retired from the rails that are still active in their unions talking about the work-life balance, talking about the sick days. So like that really, really, really seems to be the thing. And I don't know how to convince him of that other than to say that I've just never seen what he contends. He said the bargaining team was unrepresentative of the workers as a whole. Potentially. I don't know every single person on the bargaining team. I do know that is an issue in some cases. But
to the extent that it's an issue, it's often an issue for those of us who are on the left inside these unions, as opposed to like the HR people on the outside, on the other side of the table. Yeah. Right. The other side of the table is not all that concerned about how representative the bargaining team is. Right. They just want to be able to get one up on the bargaining team. Right.
Yeah. So I don't know all the people on the bargaining team. But yeah, it's an issue.
Yeah, I can't speak to how much of an issue it was in this particular case. Right. I can say that it's not a coincidence that the longtime incumbent of the BLET was voted out as a result of this fiasco. And so there could be concerns about the representation that they were receiving. It rings a little hollow coming from someone who works in HR in a factory setting. I mean, because again, your uncle, as you said, very nice person, happy person, but the position he occupies shapes his perspective.
Right. But also, it's whether or not the bargaining team is representative seems to me to be immaterial to what the issues were and how agitated the workforce was. Now, on our side,
if BLET itself had some particular flaws in how they were handling things, or there's beef with headquarters or whatever, okay, I mean, that's all cool to talk about and dissect. Right. Doesn't change the fact that railroad workers deserve sick leave, because everybody in the year 2022 deserves sick leave. Right. Or it doesn't change the fact that Democrats could have done so much more to help working people, and they chose not to. Yeah. So I agree with you. Yeah, I think you can get in the weeds there, but it doesn't really get at the heart of the matter.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that a more representative bargaining committee would have done is probably would have been pushing for more. It's probably would have been pushing for more sick leave, for more time off, and more.
If anything, it appeared. Yeah, I would imagine so. It would have been a more militant bargaining team.
Yeah.
I would say the rank and file were probably, out there a little bit more militant than the leadership was. That's certainly fair to say.
Yeah. Phil from Wisconsin. Those are our
appreciate the comment. Yeah, and I'd shared with you some stuff. I had conversations with family and stuff about the railroads and how amazing it was, the power of mainstream media. Mm-hmm. Because once that deal was signed and Joe Biden and the Democrats made their press tour announcing how they had saved the country from the brink of disaster, I have a family member who had been watching our coverage and listening to our coverage, listening to rail workers themselves, and was right on line with us. But then once they caught wind of, once that blitz on CNN and MSNBC and CNBC and Bloomberg, after, a 2-day cycle of that, it was like everything we had talked about had just disappeared and had been washed away by the propaganda. And boy, that was very frustrating.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of us deal with in our lives when we talk with friends and family is the power of media to shape people and the exposure to what people do and don't know. I mean, like you were mentioning with this guy's uncle, I don't know where he got some of that, but it wasn't from actual real journalism occurring on the subject.
Yeah, wouldn't seem to be.
So yeah, I mean that's part of it too is the media diets of people and how that impacts folks, because boy, that was just driving me insane.
Yeah.
Seeing how quickly that switched with people once the media put out that press for a couple days.
Yeah. Switching gears, one of the many things in the omnibus bill was the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and the Pump Act. Both of these support pregnant workers in different ways, and they actually passed along bipartisan lines, amazingly. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act passed 73-24 in the Senate, and the Pump Act passed 92-5 in the Senate. So that's pretty wild. So I just want to make sure that folks understand that for these bills that were all put into the omnibus, there's like 2 votes on them, right? There's the vote to actually put it in the omnibus, or like to vote to show your support for the bill itself, like on its own terms. And that's what these votes are for. And so then after it gets put into the omnibus, after you've shown your support or a rejection for the bill on its own terms, then it does or does not get put into the big omnibus bill, which then you take a vote on that as a whole, right? And so these are the votes on the bills on their own merits, not attached to anything else. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act passed the Senate 73-24. The Pump Act passed 92-5. What they do is the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act requires that employers provide pregnant workers with reasonable accommodations, such as access to water, increased bathroom breaks, and restrictions on lifting heavy objects. The Pump Act expands legally protected breaks for workers who are nursing babies. So these are very good things. They seem to me to be common sense. They seem to me like they would particularly be common sense for a party that says it's pro-life or that says it is concerned with the health and well-being of mothers, that's concerned with families, that's concerned with, that's telling women that they cannot have an abortion, that they are forced to give birth. So it seems like if you're going to force somebody to give birth, you should at least protect them while they're at work, because people got to work. Most people got to work, even if you're pregnant, even if you're a mother. So seems to me like that would be something that the Republican Party would support. Amazingly, actually, both of Alabama's senators voted for both of these 2 bills, which is,
wow,
that's wild. Richard Shelby not known for being a populist, right? This Richard Shelby, his career in the Senate is now over. He is not known for being a populist. That is not the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear Richard Shelby. And yet he voted for protections for pregnant workers, as did Tommy Tupperville. And he's kind of walking that line. I'm not sure. I don't think he's really decided if he wants to associate more with the business Republicans or these business Republicans who are pretending to be working class Republicans, right?
He's also probably not very sure what the word populism means, and so
that's
may need to
one
get
of the
back
reasons,
with you on
yeah,
that.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons that he's taking a while to figure out where he's going. But you know who did not vote for both of these bills? Populist working class Republican Josh Hawley, which is wild. He voted for the Pump Act, but he did not vote for the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. What does that do again? What does that do? Oh, it requires employers to provide pregnant workers with access to water, increased bathroom breaks, and restrictions on lifting heavy objects. So he voted against that, which means that presumably he doesn't reckon pregnant workers ought to have access to water. That their bosses ought to be able to force them to lift heavy things, and that they shouldn't be able to take bathroom breaks, which is probably super healthy for the baby, I'm sure.
What a jackass.
A few weeks ago, The Hill said that Josh Hawley had emerged as a, quote, champion of GOP populism amid Trump's decline. A couple of weeks ago, separately, Cruz had said that, quote, I think one of the most consequential political shifts of the last decade is that Republicans have become, not are becoming, they have become a blue-collar party. We are the party of working class men and women, says Ted Cruz. We are the party of truck drivers and steelworkers, says Ted Cruz, Harvard-educated fancy boy. And we're the party of railroad union workers, says Ted Cruz. This really just shows you the idea. And every single one of these people, not a single Democrat voted against the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act or the Pump Act. Every single Democrat in the Senate voted for it. The only people that voted against it were Republicans. And yet they're the party of the working class.
If they say it enough, maybe some folks will believe it.
That's just bonkers. And this is not to say, obviously, I think, if you listen to the show long enough, you're going to understand that we're not telling you, like, be gung-ho about the Democrats and spend every weekend knocking on doors for them, right? That's not what we recommend you do. We, in fact, recommend you do not do that and spend your time doing something more fruitful, like...
Which, in this case, would be almost anything
Almost
else.
anything, yeah, like organizing a union or taking a nap,
Self-care, yeah.
Self-care, yeah. These are things that you could do that would be more helpful for the world than, knocking on doors for most Democrats. But we also particularly do not want people to fall for this scam about Republicans being the party of the working class.
Right.
Because one of the people leading this movement in the Republican Party, leading the movement of people pretending to give a damn about working folks, is Josh Hawley. And he doesn't reckon that pregnant folks ought to be able to have access to water at work. Like, what else do you say? That's bonkers. I don't know if you've got anything else on that, Adam, but I can't think of anything else to say other than that's crazy.
No, I mean, I just will echo what you said about that. I mean, the Republicans are doing this posturing about blue collar and working class voters, and of course we could always add in parentheses white, right? Because obviously they're not too interested in appealing to non-white working class voters, And if you're not sure about that, just, pay attention to literally anything they say.
Yeah.
Or the way they present themselves. But even beyond that, part of what's so insidious about it is the entire premise is class as like a cultural affect and identity, and not actually a relationship to the economy and production. And that's where it gets very, very frustrating, and I think mystifying for people. And you walk away from watching Fox News and MSNBC and working class or blue collar, it's almost like a cultural brand, right. Or, it's like what kind of truck you drive and what do you wear flannel shirts and right. That kind of thing, as opposed to, okay, do you work for somebody or does someone work for you?
Yeah.
Where do you sit in this economy? Are you a wage earner or do you live off profits and rents and dividends and interest?
Yeah.
And so that's not what they're discussing when they're talking about class. They have tried to shoehorn working class into being a synonym for cultural conservatism.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, yeah, we're real blue collar because, we also go to church and we also don't like those queers and weirdos coming out of the woodwork. Yep. Never mind that I'm the boss and that I own this company.
Right.
But I'm very blue collar because I wear flannel and I drive a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, a $50,000 pickup truck. Yeah, that just has always irritated me, and I've always seen that a lot here in the South, like intersecting with the redneck identity too. Mm-hmm. You have those like fake rednecks who, they're trying to portray themselves as these country redneck folks in their $50,000 truck right. And several $100 outfit. It's just. To me, that's what it reminds me of. Right. It reminds me of the rich suburban kids that were play acting as rednecks. And they're doing the same kind of stuff here.
Yeah. So getting back to the railroaders for a second, Sam Cedar on the Majority Report takes messages to the show. And one listener asked, basically, why should Biden spend political capital on railroad workers when so many are conservative? So many are that, conservative work. There are which is, we were just talking about Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley. They're pretending to be, pro-working class and turning that working class identity into a cultural affectation. When we say that, we are not saying that there are not working class people who are culturally conservative. That is obviously the case. And there are, to the clip that you're about to see, to this IMers point, some of them are conservative. I think Sam answered well. I wanted to expand on it, though. So, Adam, let's play that clip, and then we'll respond.
Support the workers, but real talk. How many of those union guys actually vote for Democrats? 40, 50%? Just a raw political calculus. Speaking specifically about the rail union, check the demographics. I get your point, but I think the symbolic part, and I happen to believe that they're like mainstream Democrats, people in general don't care that much. They really don't. They would have cared much more about the strike happening and things. But I think for the base of the Democratic Party, a significant portion of the base of the Democratic Party, this is something that's going to sting for, into the next election. They got to do something about it.
So there, one of the things that I just want to expand on it is that, in my opinion, that there are a large contingent of union railroaders who vote Republican is a reason to support them.
Right. It's evidence of your own failures thus far.
Evidence of your own failures so far. And it is like they're there for the taking. I mean, if you read, I just sent you last week, Adam, a page from a book that I'm reading about a paper strike in Maine, where Jesse Jackson came to speak to them. And he just came to speak to them. Imagine if he had the power to give them 7 more paid sick days, and then he did it, right? Imagine how much that would do. But he just came to speak to them and show his support. And this one white woman said, "Yesterday, I could not have imagined voting for a black man for president. And today," this is quote is after the speech, "today I'm writing him a check for his campaign." That's how much power you have to influence the decision of people when you help them. When you reach out your hand to folks, people appreciate that. People appreciate that. And you illuminate whose side people are on. And so if Joe Biden came out there and went to support these I'm confident that it's not a majority, but some of these union rail workers who do vote Republican, they're going to say, wow, that's funny. This Democrat got me 7 paid sick days. Wow. And look at this. Dozens of Republicans voted against it. So if it was up to them, I wouldn't have it. That's interesting. Donald Trump hasn't said anything about this. Well, that's interesting. So like the fact that it's a constituency that's ready for the taking is what I'm saying. Obviously, if he had done this, I'm not saying 100% of these people would have voted Democrat, but more of them would have. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you, bet me any amount of money you want. I mean, it's not operable because this isn't happening, right? But if Joe Biden had gotten them 7 paid sick days, I'd bet you any amount of money that you wanted, more union railroaders would have voted for him than will in 2024 now. And more union people, because it's not just like Sam said, this is going to sting the base. The base of the Democratic Party, the people who are activated and routinely vote for Democrats, union members across the country, this stung for them. And it is going to be that much harder to pull the lever for the lesser evil for people in 2024.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. I mean, and let's also just say this. It's the right thing to do.
Right.
Like,
would be nice if we could.
Demographics aside, polling aside, partisanship aside, it's the right thing to do to help workers, right? And you should have a politics that's based around how do we help working class people? How do we build the power of working class people? And I think if your politics is motivated by that, you're not even really going to have to ask this question.
Right. Yeah, that would be nice if we could just have politics and the questions are, does this help working people? That would be nice to have a politics like that. But also on the flip side of that, like, okay, it's the right thing to do. I contend, and I feel extremely confident about this, it would be politically expedient. There would be a value to it in terms of the people that will vote for you. That's what I contend. I also contend that it's zero cost. Who is the constituency that is going to be going into the ballot box in 2024 saying, I would have voted for Joe Biden, but he gave rail workers 7 paid sick days. I would have done that, but now I'm not. Who is that?
Warren Buffett?
Yeah.
I mean, I assume it's the handful of railroad barons, and I mean, maybe there is legitimate fear there of the railroad barons and what they would do to them. But last I checked, they weren't already there. It's not like they could count on them for support.
Right.
So I suppose you could inflame tensions there, and they could come out hard and heavy for the Republicans and fight you hard in the future elections. But I don't know. I agree with you. I think there's just you have much more to gain by doing the right thing than you do with what they've done. Standing on the side of capital. But again, that presumes that they want to win.
Right.
And I don't make that presumption of all Democratic officials, that they want to win. Not in the way that you and I define victory.
Yeah.
Not in the sense of winning elections and then passing legislation. That's not necessarily the goal for all those folks. Yeah. Or if it is, it's not necessarily the primary goal. And so that's something else.
Adam, did you hear about, actually I asked you this before the show, you had not heard about the Olive Garden manager that was fired for sending an angry email to employees.
No, I have not heard about that.
So let's just let Mark Walsh, he's a Daily Wire fourth stringer, let's let him explain.
Okay, let's see.
A manager at an Olive Garden in Kansas has been fired after sending an angry email to employees telling them that they may not call out of work for any reason. And if they claim that their dog died as an excuse for coming to work, they have to bring the dead dog in as proof. Now, the manager, whose name has not been published, thankfully, was fired, and most people have applauded the decision after the email went viral. But I'm on the manager's side of this.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Why am I not surprised?
I mean, could you imagine, like, seeing that email? And, look, okay. Managers at an Olive Garden are not, society's elites, okay? They're not making significantly more than their servers are. And so they're, just, to a certain extent, they're just regular people. And this was probably a low point for this person. They probably were really upset about something, who knows. Adam and I have both worked in service industry, and it can be very stressful.
I even served as a shift manager for a while in a fast food industry. So, I got a little taste of it. Like I am pretty familiar with like what the general managers and those type go through. And yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously there's power dynamics at play there. They have more power than the workers in the restaurants, but in the grand scheme of the economy, they're pretty low.
Yeah,
sure.
And they have to. I mean, and in most cases, they have to work hard.
Right. This is not a management type of position where they don't have to work.
Right.
Typically, they do, and it would not be until you get to higher like levels in the corporate chain or other. Right. Or like the owners, the franchisees. Now, yes, in those cases, they're not having to work. But, your regular general manager at a restaurant.
They have to work, and they have to work hard, and they have to work more than most of their employees.
And a lot of times what it is they take employees who are servers and cooks and stuff like that. If they find one that has management potential, quote unquote, they try to talk them into going into management, partially so they can work them more, but at a salary as opposed to an hourly rate, right? Yeah. And so if you got somebody who's working 50 hours a week, put them on salary, call them a manager, and then you can work them as much overtime as you want. And I've seen that a lot in the service industry.
Yeah, I've had to put shifts together, and I have been like the lead person during multiple shifts, and so I have felt the frustration of somebody calling in for what I presume was probably a BS reason, right? But it's also Olive Garden. It's a minimum wage job. Those servers are making $2 an hour. Olive Garden gives them $2 an hour for their time. And so, you know what? Like, as the person who has to do the shift when somebody calls out, like, that sucks. But Olive Garden doesn't get, they can't expect to get more than a $2 an hour commitment. And I got to tell you, right now, my commitment that you would get from me for $2 an hour is pretty low.
Well, Jacob, doesn't that impugn your work ethic, sir?
Right.
Well, that aside, I mean, I was just reading over the actual text of the email, and this person is talking about how they got in a wreck on the way to work. Airbags went off and everything. The car was totaled. But they, you know what? They still showed up to work on time.
Yeah. Well, now
like,
that is brainworms.
Right. Yeah. Like, okay, that's not you being a dedicated hard worker. I'm all about being a dedicated hard worker. That's not even normal. That's not right. Right. That should be like a red flag And I hope that, like, upon reflection, they reread that sentence and think, you know what? I have some weird priorities in my life.
Yeah.
I put Olive Garden above my own, like, personal well-being, personal safety.
Right.
Yeah, it's
and think about
weird.
that. Like this person, I don't know if male or female, this person was let go after 11 and a half years of Darden because of this email. And I don't know how much, but like, I don't know how much other issues that they had with this person from this email. Probably, I would assume, like, they were not an easy person to work for, right? But that is kind of like, wow, one email.
Isn't that proof
Right.
of, like, the just the folly of having such loyalty to these companies that have no loyalty to you? Unless you have due process in law or union contract, you can be fired as an at-will employee, and they do not give a shit about you, no matter how long you've worked there, no matter how dedicated you are. That's business. What was it the UMWA guy said earlier today? Something about the bottom line is always going to be on top of people.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. In the comments, we've got Charles says, referring to these to the managers, you do manual labor and you manage. I was a manager at Papa John's and worked 7 days a week, was averaging about $7 an hour. People used to regularly threaten to hurt us over messed up pizzas. People would scream at us. Workers called in every day. Very stressful. Obviously, very stressful. And so, like,
I saw that a lot too.
The email, totally inappropriate. If this was it, do I think that this person deserves to be fired? I don't know. That's tough for me, especially if this is true. 11 and a half years, that's rough, right? That's rough. And no doubt this person probably worked, Charles, like you, not making a lot of money, working all the time. And so this is not to email, totally inappropriate, and this person needs to get their priorities in order. But none of this is to say that this person didn't work hard. But let's actually read.
Well, and in general, I usually am against firing someone, especially who has a length of service, over a mistake.
Right. So let's actually read the email, though. Our call-offs are occurring at a staggering rate. From now on, if you call off, you might as well go out and look for another job. We are no longer tolerating any excuse for calling off. If you're sick, you need to come prove it to us. If you're, like, what, by sneezing on you? If your dog died, you need to bring him in and prove it to us. If it's a, quote, family emergency and you can't say, too bad, go work somewhere else. If you only want morning shifts, too bad, go work at a bank. If anyone from here on out calls out more than once in the next 30 days, you will not have a job. Do you know in my 11 and a half years at Darden how many days I called off? 0. Psychotic. Insane. Looney Tunes. I came in sick.
Gross.
Not healthy. I do not want my server or my cook or anyone in the restaurant to be sick while I'm eating their food. Ew. Ew. Gross. What the hell? Why? I got in a wreck. Literally, that's like a health violation, right? Like, you can't, you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
You're not supposed to do that.
And maybe she should be wondering if Darden is providing sufficient sick leave.
Yeah.
So that she doesn't have to do such a thing.
I got in a wreck literally on my way to work one time. Airbags went off and my car was totaled, but you know what? I made it to work on time. Again, psychotic. There are no more excuses. Us collectively as a management team have had enough. If you don't want to work here, don't. It's as simple as that. If you're here and want to work, then work. No more complaining about not being cut or not being able to leave early. And this is a thing that I have a real issue with in the service industry, because on nights where you should not be keeping the entire serving staff on through the whole shift, because as the rush leaves, you should be letting servers go, because servers only make $2 an hour. So if they don't have tables, or they don't have as many tables, they don't get paid, right? You should not be having a full serving staff all the way to close. You should be cutting people. And that was one of the punishments that we got when there were too many people calling out, or, whatever. That was one of the punishments, was literally a pay cut for a matter of a few weeks by keeping more people on for longer. And that's inappropriate. If you're here and want to work, then work. No more complaining about not being cut or being able to leave early. You're in the restaurant business. Do you think I want to be here until midnight on Friday and Saturday? No. I'd much rather be at home with my husband and dog, going to the movies or seeing family. But I don't. I'm dedicated to being here, as should you. No more excuses or complaints. I hope you choose to continue to work here, and I think we, management, make it as easy as we can on y'all. Doubt it. Thank you for your time. And to those who come in every day on time and work hard, I wish there were more like you. Psychotic email.
I'm dedicated to being here, as should you.
Right.
I'm selling a fraction of my time and my labor power in exchange for a wage that's not very good.
Yeah.
Okay? There's not a lot of dedication that needs to go into that. And I'm someone who's always tried to do a good job. Even when I worked at these crappy jobs in certain restaurants that were underpaying me and overworking me, you know what? I still tried to do the best I could because that's just how I am. My mama raised me, always work hard, no matter what. And so that's what I've always tried to do. But, like, come on now.
Right.
Dedication.
Right.
It's just, it is bizarre.
And that's, like you said, that's fine enough. And I work hard. I try to work hard, and I think it's good to work hard. And I don't think it's good. If you're gonna work, you should put in some amount of effort. But also, the companies should pay you for your effort. And if they don't want to do that, then what do you expect? I'm not gonna give you $30 of effort for $2. I'm just not. And similarly,
they're not going to give you $30 an hour for $2 effort, right?
Exactly. They're not going to give me as a customer $30 of food for $2 either.
Right.
So it never, ever, ever goes the other way. Workers are always implicitly or explicitly told to work above what they're being compensated for. Always work as hard as you can, work above and beyond, and blah, 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 blah.
And always come in sick.
Yeah, come in sick to a
restaurant. Even if you are dealing with the public, even if you're handling food, you should come in sick.
Yeah, come in sick to a restaurant. Gross. But it's never expected for the company to pay you more than the value you create. It's never expected for a company to pay you or to give you more goods or services than you pay for. That's just never the case. It's always workers who have to give more than we're being compensated for, and that's just ridiculous. But Walsh, Mark Walsh explains why he doesn't, why he is on the side of the manager. So let's hear him out. Maybe I don't know. Maybe there's something that we're not thinking of. Let's play this first clip.
The point is that there is reason to object to this manager's message to employees if you insist on taking it absolutely literally. But a more charitable interpretation is that this person is trying to run a restaurant and yet is sabotaged every step of the way by spoiled, entitled brats who want a paycheck but don't want to put the work in to earn it. And these are frustrations shared by a great many managers in the restaurant and retail space and other industries. Call-outs and no-shows are at an all-time high. And it's not because everyone's dogs are dying all of a sudden. It's not because there's a record number of family emergencies. If it's a medical emergency driving this problem, the medical emergency is a severe allergy to hard work. I think that's the real epidemic happening here. This is an affliction which has spread across an entire generation and beyond. And the people who are trying desperately to keep our economy afloat by keeping these businesses open, they're fed up and they're furious. And as I've often preached, life requires work. Life is work. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. The only question is whether you will do the work necessary to sustain your own existence, or if you'll find a way to force someone else to do it for you.
That last part was interesting. I wanted to leave that in there because that's like, so are you going to do the work or are you going to be a boss, right? That's the thing.
Right.
That's the real thing. He's meaning it as, are you going to do the work or are you going to be some lousy welfare queen or blah, 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 blah. That's what he's meaning it. But of course, working people actually know that the real thing is we do the work and the people at the top make the money. That's the thing. Rail workers are the ones pushing the trains across the country, and Warren Buffett's making all the money, right? That's the actual dynamic. That is the real life dynamic every day across the country, is that workers do the work and bosses make the money. Bosses make the money. But that's not what he means. He also mentioned as the clip started that call-outs are at an all-time high. How would one even assess such a thing? How does he know that?
Well, I'm sure he's very up on the latest industry trends and data. Wouldn't you know? They take journalistic integrity very seriously over there at the Daily Wire.
Yeah. $30 super chat from Bigalameo. Thank you. Drop some love for the Valley Labor Report, fellow plebs. Sid says the point of these right-wing shows is to be for the bosses. Being transphobic is just the cherry on top. And that's what we want to point out for these people. Like, I want, I hope that we get some people, because usually when we talk about these people, sometimes we'll get in their algorithm, and some of these folks will come in and they'll be like really angry, right? That that I'm insulting their favorite personality, or whatever. But you've got a lot more in common with the person whose dog may or may not die and doesn't come in at Olive Garden than you do with people like Mark Walsh. And that's the thing. That is the thing that you need to understand. And you do have a lot in common with this manager, but the manager is taking the side of corporate. They're not showing solidarity with people that work like her. They're taking solidarity with corporate, and that's the issue. And that's what people like this Walsh person that's what they're doing. Let's play the next clip.
Door number 2 was never available to most humans who have lived on the planet, but it is available for us. Okay? Because as it turns out, the system that really controls things, this is what they want. They want you to be a lazy good-for-nothing, just coasting through life with no ambition, no real desires, no plan, nothing. They want you to be satisfied with being merely fed and distracted. That's what they want. So they've made this option available to us. And you think you could protest that system by doing exactly what they want, by becoming the sort of person they want you to be, which is like a non-person, a non-entity, and just a big nothing who...
What? Like, what system is he talking about that wants people not to work? Like, how... this is what not understanding... This is what not understanding or pretending not to understand. I don't know which it is for this guy, right? I'm not sure if he actually really believes that the system, whatever that may be, doesn't want us to work. I don't know if he actually believes that or if he just pretends to believe that, because pretending to believe that plays into what you were talking about earlier in the show, Adam, the turning of working class into a cultural conservative affect. Turning working class not into, analyzing society based on cultural affects, not on people's relation to productivity, not on people's relation to the economy or their work, whether they work or somebody works for them, not analyzing the economy or society based on that, but based on whether they hate trans people enough. So if you because this analysis is totally disconnected from reality.
Well, the one thing I'll say that he mentioned that did sort of resonate is talking about, the system more or less wants you to be content just being fed and distracted. Well, okay, there's some truth to that. I would say that yes, capital would prefer that we be content with the bare minimum amount to be fed and distractions. That's why over the last 50 years, we've seen wages stagnate or decline, and healthcare skyrocket, housing skyrocket. But you can have Netflix or Hulu. right? You have almost endless distractions that are at our fingertips now. It's so much cheaper now to afford a computer, a flat screen TV, to get access to all the streaming. That is where we've seen prices go down and where technology has really grown, and it is in the field of distraction. Yeah. So, maybe he is onto something a little bit there, but he's talking about phenomena that is neoliberal capitalism.
And neoliberal capitalism does not they want you to be content and not ask for more, but they do not want you to not work.
Right.
You have to work.
Outside of a reserve army of unemployed, and which, again, there is a segment of society that will be unemployed, and that is on purpose, because as long as there's unemployed folks, well, that's always leverage for the employer. I think oftentimes these far-right cranks will touch on things that can resonate, but from the wrong direction, or they're describing the consequences of their own ideologies.
Right. Charles says he's projecting a weird existential shadow of his ideology.
Yeah, projection is a lot of what this is about.
So I've got one more topic that I wanted to touch on, and that's this hustle and grind stuff that's popping off. A few weeks ago we talked to some hustle and grind folks locally here on the show, and one of those reasons is that, like I said earlier, I like to argue. I enjoy talking to people that, maybe that's a character flaw, but I enjoy stuff like that. But also, these type of folks are really popping off in a lot of ways in the last year or so. These red pill guys, Andrew Tate is one of them. He just got arrested in Romania for human trafficking charges, actually. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about a tweet that he sent on Christmas. What are you doing? Tweeting crazy things on Christmas. Go spend time with your family. And a response that he got from a just really, really, really sad guy. I really feel sorry for this guy. So, Adam, listen to this. Here's Andrew Tate's tweet.
Christmas message.
You are poor. You are unimportant. Men do not fear you. Your woman disagrees with you. Your lives are shit. If I was forced to endure a year of your life, it would be the worst level of depression imaginable. This is clearly an insult on normal working people. Just a normal working, this is his Christmas message to you. Is that you're terrible, you're not as fancy as me, you don't have a Bugatti.
Your woman disagree. Come on now.
Yeah. It's bizarre, but it's bizarre that people, because he's obviously, if you are not a millionaire or a billionaire, he's talking about you. Even if you listen to his, this was on Twitter, so this was for his followers, right? This is what he thinks about you, and he's saying it out loud, and people still like it. I don't understand. And particularly the groveling that people did in the comments of this. A lot of it was people clowning on him, and rightfully so. But this guy, just from a self-proclaimed business owner, quote, "This is big inspiration. Doesn't matter how it is dressed up. Real talk or talk, you got to get yourself going. It's Christmas Day, and I'm still grinding. There's someone out there who will work even harder than me today. I need to be them and outwork them. Attitude." What a sad life, right? Just how do people look at that? Look at that kind of thing. This is the kind of audience that this guy attracts. How do people look at that and be anything other than sorry for him? But, this kind of stuff is really beneficial to capital. You get these freaks preaching to disaffected young folks that you got to grind on Christmas or else you're a terrible person, and it makes you a lot more malleable to the boss. It makes you a lot more malleable if your entire self-worth is a competition with some freak on Twitter about how hard you work, how many hours you worked in the week, or how many, NFTs you're selling, that's helpful for the boss. That's helpful for capital. And it also individualizes your problem so that you're not looking outwards. I'm a low-wage worker at Papa John's making $7 an hour. It's my fault. I just need to work harder. I need to give more to Papa John's.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I notice a lot about a lot of this rhetoric is it's all about the individualism.
Yes.
And it's neglecting to recognize that we are members of a society. And society affects us and we affect society, but no, not to hear them talk. It's all just about you individually. Yeah, if you're poor, it's because your own mistakes, your own flaws. And if you make it big and you are rich, well, then it's because you're just that much better than everybody else.
Right.
And so the hustle and grind folks are on their way to reaching the top where they can, sit safely and on their perch and look down on all the rest of us that aren't as good as them.
I mean, you listen to,
it's
and
a
that's
very bizarre kind of mentality. And frankly, one that is, I think, lends itself to pretty sociopathic outcomes.
Right. Yeah. Just what a sad life to tie your entire self-worth to the time that you sell to a company or to building up a company that you don't care about. It's one thing, like I put a lot of work into this. I don't make any money from it. I don't take any money from it. But I put a lot of work into it and I'm proud of it. But it's because I care about it. It's not because I'm not, I don't know, maybe some people would say I hustle and grind about this show or about the union or whatever, but I don't hustle and grind for the union or for my fellow workers because I want to make a bunch of money.
Right.
Or because I want people to, because I want to be like famous or some, hustle and grind idol.
Yeah, the problem is not like having ambition or being a striver per se. It's like to what end?
Right.
To what end do you have this ambition or this drive or
I mean, a lot of these people, they're doing all this stuff to try to make more money or to try to make themselves look like they have more money. And they're working all these hours. They say they work all these hours. And, I don't know, if you added up all of the time that I spend not leisure time, between my full-time job, my work for my union, my work for the Labor Council, my work on the show, you add all that up and probably I'm working as much as a lot of these weird hustle and grind people. But it's not for this weird material obsession. It's because I work at my job to make money to live. And that's it. That's it. I have a certain amount of, affinity for the work that I do at work. I feel like I'm doing a certain amount to help the environment and things like this with my job. But at the end
of the day, it's your means of survival.
It's my means of survival. The other stuff that I hustle and grind for is because, I believe in it. I believe in it. I believe in working people. I believe that we deserve more. And I believe that, that I want to help folks understand why they deserve more, understand that they deserve more, understand how to get more. And it's not by, sacrificing your life to a corporation. It's by coming together with your fellow workers and taking back the time that you have from that corporation and making them pay you equitably for it, making them pay you reasonably for it, so that you can spend the rest of your time doing something that's actually meaningful. Doing something that's actually meaningful, like spending time with your family, like making friends, like going to the bar, going to the church. Doing something that's actually meaningful instead of sacrificing your life to capital. Just what a sad way to live your life. What a sad way to live your life. On Christmas, no less. On Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about I'm grinding on Christmas and I feel bad. This guy, you can tell he feels bad because he's not grinding even harder. How sad.
Yeah.
How sad.
Well, and it's also sad when you see folks that can't believe in anything bigger than themselves. And that's a big problem in this country, is folks who cannot see or believe in something bigger and beyond their own immediate life.
Yeah.
So I think anyone who in any way does act in some way or believe in some way that recognizes the connections that we have as fellow humans, you are a radical.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you realize it or not, because frankly it cuts against the grain of what we're trained to think and believe in this country, because this hustle and grind stuff is not really all that new. It's just repackaged every few years.
Yeah.
It comes and goes, and it's always going to be an undercurrent in our culture.
Yeah. All right, folks. That's going to wrap it up for us today.
Yeah, I hope everyone had a great Christmas. Wanted to wear my Toy Makers Local 69 Elf and Reindeer Union sweatshirt today, since this will be my last time for a year. But yeah, I hope everyone did enjoy their Christmas and whatever other holidays they may be into over this time of year. Hope everyone has a safe New Year's Eve. Stay off the roads if you can help it. Just be responsible. And really looking forward to 2023 and the many good things we have coming down the pike. And looking forward to doing bigger, better things in the year ahead.
Until then, send us money at tvlr.fm/donate. Stay safe. All power to the working class. We'll see you next year. Bye.